Welcome to Geared for Growth. I'm your host, Mike Mortlock from MCG Quantity Surveyors. Today on the show, we're cutting through one of property's noisiest claims, that a special structure or trust can unlock unlimited borrowing and fast-track you to a mega portfolio. Recent headlines have put a spotlight on parts of the buyer's agent industry and the creep of financial advice coming into the marketing. So I've brought back someone who sits on the numbers side of the fence. Jeremy Iannuzzelli from Property Partners, registered tax agent, seasoned investor and straight shooter. We unpack what trusts can do, what they can't, and why most investors hit a serviceability ceiling long before they run out of structures. Jeremy lays out a simple framework: lending strategy, acquisition strategy, and structure strategy. And he shows how the order matters. We talk cash flow versus capital, why your first one or two properties often belong in personal names, the real costs and risks of trusts, depreciation outcomes across structures, land tax traps, and practical ways to get unstuck. From income lifts and rent increases to value add plays, and yes, sometimes even selling. If you've been told an accountant's letter or a shiny new entity is the magic key, this episode gives you the nuance to ask better questions and make better decisions. As always, it's general information. Get advice specific to your situation. But let's dive in. Jeremy Iannuzzelli, welcome back to Geared for Growth.
Mike, it's a pleasure to be back on, mate. It's been a long time between drinks.
It has. I think the last time might have been, the budget kind of update in March or thereabouts. Looking forward to another one of those. And obviously there's a lot happening in property at the moment. So I was desperate to get you back on, especially given something that happened in the last 24 hours in the national media. We saw the chair of the Property Investors Council of Australia, Ben Kingsley, basically write an open letter of concern for the buyer's agent industry, which got national press. One of the things that he was kind of citing is this financial advice that kind of finds its way into the Facebook ads and the Instagram ads, or just in general the posts, where there's this idea of this unlimited borrowing and using trust to accelerate your portfolio growth. As an accountant, I know you work with a lot of property investors. You're a seasoned property investor yourself. You have buyers, agents, clients. How pervasive is this kind of unlimited capacity stuff that you're seeing?
Yeah, look, there's always the facts are behind the figures, never let, or as my father used to say, never let facts get in the way of a good story. So there is some element around it that you can prolong your ability to continue to buy property utilising the right structure, but it comes back down to capital as well. So you're still going to need a certain amount of capital to fund for a deposit, because if you're continuing to use debt to fund deposits of further and further and further properties, your overall leverage gets closer and closer and closer to 100%. And at that particular stage, it doesn't matter what you're really buying in this country, it's most likely going to be negatively geared, meaning your expenses are more than your income. Where if you're a high net wealth individual or a high income earning director or owning a company with lots of capital, generally you'll see a lot of the wealthy people will utilize cash savings to form part of the deposit and then borrow the balance of capital from the bank. And they'll tip in enough that they need to bring it into a position that keeps the bank saying yes. Yep. And if you go even further than that and look at commercial lending is not even taking into account your borrowing capacity in most circumstances. It's about the amount of capital that you have or deposit you're putting into the deal. It's about maybe the tenant, such as a commercial property tenant. Could be about the deal itself, what they call gross realised valuations. Does it stack up? Is it going to make as much money as you thought? And we'll back you on that basis. So there is an element, Mike, of that, yes, structure can prolong your borrowing capacity, but quite often what I find is people run out of capital before they really exhaust the benefits that come with the right structure. In saying that, there's lots of things happening where people are buying certain assets, again, under 100% leverage environment, where they're using equity from another property to fund a deposit and borrow the balance from a bank to buy a property in a trust. What people are misunderstanding is that it's not just that 80% loan you've taken from the bank, Mike. It's also where the funding has come from for the deposit and costs.
Yes.
And when you add those together, and I talk about this 100% leverage environment, you'll often find that the asset you're buying is quite negatively geared.
Mm.
And therefore, it's not going to give you that borrowing capacity benefit that you hear about through having a structure like a trust being self-sufficient, meaning total income of the trust is more than the total costs, including the running costs of the entity as well.
Mm.
So there's some main things that people need to consider under the illusion of structure. While as an accountant, I'm all for it. I've structured many of my assets in trusts and companies doing various different things with various different business plans attached to it. There's always an exit strategy or there's always a bigger plan at play. And, I'm looking at buying property now where I add value to it. And for me, property is not necessarily something I may hold for 20 years. There may be a sooner exit strategy than that, which gives me an opportunity then to do something else with that money and
Mm.
constantly have it in the market growing and ideally getting a much better return than just your standard 7%.
What's different about you than a buyer's agent, though, is you are a registered tax agent. You are a highly credentialed and qualified accountant. It begs the question, do you feel like buyer's agents should be introducing these concepts of special purpose vehicles or trusts for purchasing and property, or should they sort of maybe provide some education to say, look, this exists, chat to your accountant to see if it's worthwhile for you, rather than this is what you need to do? Because it sounds like that's the way that buyer's agents are going. They're saying you need to set these things up.
I think the older statesmen in the industry, now you and I, we've been lucky enough, Mike, to be around for quite a while. Our probably grey hairs that we hide don't suggest it, but
Mm.
we've seen the evolution of buyers agents over the last 15 to 20 years. We've seen them at the very start, at the point of time where the industry itself was at its infancy, to
Mm.
where it is now, where there's quite a lot of buyers agents coming into the market. There's institutes available there for people to learn how to become a buyer's agent. And there's a substantial amount of data out there as well, and tools and subscriptions they can use. Where you and I, we're probably still trolling around the newspapers to find our properties. And data and all that stuff took months, if not years, to come out to the open public. So
Mm.
we didn't have all the information relevant at hand. However, in saying that, I do feel a lot of the newer buyers agents, newer professionals that are coming into the market probably haven't learned where that line of separation needs to be just yet. Lots of new clients I speak to, young kids and middle-aged people and even older people are quoting real genuine tax advice or financial advice that they heard from their buyer's agent who was potentially not in the industry for a long time and not even from a financial background themselves.
Mm.
The older statesmen, they tend to know that line and they tend to inquire and give people ideas about what things they need to consider and going to talk to the right professionals about it. But there's a lot of clickbait marketing out there, which, each their own. It's there to generate leads, and leads obviously generate income and business growth. But that marketing needs to be tailored to what you're actually offering, and letting the other professionals like you and I and financial planners and mortgage brokers take care of our lanes. Because quite often I'm fighting with people not to spend their money and not creating structures.
Mm.
They're just coming to me saying, I'm doing this, and these are the reasons why I'm doing it. And I then spend 25 to 30 minutes of my time justifying why they shouldn't, to save them money and to save them a headache as well.
Yeah, whereas I suppose the incentive is on the other side of the equation, right? Like you actually have an incentive to say, oh, you want to do this? Yeah, like we can do that, and you'll make more money giving them what the buyer's agent told them they need, or perhaps even they think they want, than saying to them, well, maybe slow down a little bit. Like you haven't yet bought an investment property in your personal name, or your situation is such that it's probably not advantageous at this point in time. It's not a matter of you either need to set a trust up at the beginning or you never can, right?
And I've always got a general rule of thumb, your first couple of properties that you're looking to buy, and again, this is not a one size fits all, but a one size that fits many.
Mm-hmm.
Your first couple of properties, Mike, you should be looking to do that in individual names. Keep the
Yep.
costs low, keep the tax simple, keep the lending simple. And then, your first two or three properties that you may purchase may not be your only properties that you ever buy. You may have more, you may sell down a couple and rebuy later on, you may change and pivot your strategy altogether. But I think to go out there, and I bring it back to business, if you're a small depreciation schedule company or a small accounting firm, and you go out and go buy a 1,000 square meter office to fit 2 employees, I think it's a bit of an overkill. You want
That's
to
a good one.
grow into your portfolio. You want to look at your situation today and know, identify and understand that where I am today is not necessarily the same place I'll be in 10 or 15 years' time. I see so many younger people in their early 20s on 50, 60, 70, 80 grand that are wanting to do trust to extend their borrowing capacity, but they're babies in their profession. Your peak income generally comes in your mid 30s and goes all the way through to your mid 40s or even late 40s. That's your real good time to generate your peak level of income. And that traditionally is your time to really generate a large portion of your wealth,
Yep.
because your kids are most likely at school. You've maybe got the PPOR down pat. You understand your finances. You're more sophisticated, a little bit more, more developed with common sense. You've seen the world a little bit now, and that's maybe sometimes the best time to really go aggressive on your portfolio, because you know how to pull and pull back or push forward at the right times. So it's knowing and identifying where I am today is not necessarily where I'll be in 3 or 4 years' time, or even 5 years' time. Borrowing capacity evolves and changes. You and I have seen a GFC, we've seen the Banking Royal Commission, we've seen COVID 2% rates, and we've seen 12 interest rate rises over 2 years post-COVID.
Yeah, APRA intervention, 2 elections with negative gearing on the chopping block. There's, you could add a lot to that, couldn't you?
And there's just so many material changes throughout that, past 15 to nearly 2 decades, where it's impacted borrowing capacity. Borrowing capacity isn't this beautiful linear graph that just continues to increase year on year. There's windows of opportunity.
Yes.
And I think having the wisdom, the team, and the professionals around you to know when those windows are open and go as hard as you can is important, but also having that team and the wisdom to pull back and consolidate, that also is important. And I often will do that, and many other successful investors will as well, is we'll pull back, we'll ring fence money, we'll build up capital and we'll save, which means building equity. And then when that door opens, we go hard and we keep following the same pattern. So it's knowing when to have that right structure to come into play. Early stages, you want to do things simple, a little bit of negative gearing benefits, and then progressively as you start to invest longer and more, you want to then open up the more sophisticated structures.
Typically, I suppose what people are trying to avoid is hitting their head on the serviceability point. And, there's all these Facebook posts about, I got stuck at 3 and I got stuck at 6, and then I used a mortgage broker, or I use some sort of strategy. Here's how you can avoid the mistakes that I made. What are we talking about when we're getting stuck? And typically, what are the best ways to avoid these points of getting stuck? Or is that just part of the process? You hit your head on the serviceability and then you pivot, and then maybe you investigate things like trusts.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's it. There always will be a point in time where you will get stuck. And I've been in that point of time 3 or 4 times in my property investment journey. What I then do is I focus on what is the low-hanging fruit to unstuck myself or unstick myself from this potentially nasty situation. And it always revolves back to 3 or 4 different things. Going back on my existing portfolio and finding the little ways to improve the rental income. And that could be through some cosmetic renovations, reviewing my current rents. It could be even major renovations, looking at where I can add value to the property in granny flats. Because remember, more rental income we earn, that also corresponds with some more borrowing capacity we get.
Yep.
I always continue to save during those periods of time, and then I'll also focus back on my business or my employment.
Yep.
What things can I do to improve my income position? Because more income we earn, obviously more borrowing capacity we get, and that's something that we are in control of. We can work multiple jobs. We can look for an alternate job or an employer who might be paying more. We can start our own business. We can work those extra hours. That's the little things that we can do to control. And then once I've reviewed those 3, then I can start to incorporate structure into play.
Yep.
Pivots also are very important. Again, there's many times I've sold properties in my journey, Mike, where they just didn't fit my investment strategy anymore. I bought them at a time where it was 10 years ago. My income was at a different level. My knowledge was at a different level. And these are not properties typically I would hold today. They could be lower denominated properties where the purchase price was a couple $100,000. The value is only 400,000 for argument's sake. Rent might be decent, but it's not a type of property I can add value to.
Yeah.
Could have been a townhouse or a unit. So I am looking and always currently surveying my own portfolio where I can improve things or where I may need to let something go to take that one step back And it might not necessarily be 2 steps forward, Mike, but it might be 1 1/4 step forward.
Yep.
And that small 1/4 increase can make a world of difference in improving your portfolio position.
Awesome. Now, there's lots of property investors that I think get involved because they want the mega portfolio. They want to be in that, top couple of percent that have 6 or more properties. For those people, are there different rules that apply, or should they think in a different way, or is it just accept the fact that everybody gets stuck, like actually hitting your head and the bank sort of saying, well, no, the way that you're doing this is the end, isn't actually necessarily a bad thing. It's just actually part of the process of becoming a sophisticated property investor?
Yeah, there's always going to look. I never believe that there is an end. The end comes obviously when we're not breathing and we're not here on this
Yep.
earth anymore. After that, no one can help you. But I never believe there's an end. I believe there's a pause in time.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that it could be 1 or 2 or 3 years where, again, you're out of the property market and, you might have assets still growing, which means you're increasing wealth. But again, seeing all the things that have changed over the past 2 decades, there will be a time where lending will open up. I've seen policies stricken and I've seen policies relaxed.
Yep.
During the Banking Royal Commission, it was incredibly tough to get a loan. Come
Mm-hmm.
COVID, it was very easy. Prior to COVID, prior to the Royal Commission, in 2012 to 2016, 95% plus LMI loans. 2 pay slips, you got a loan from the bank.
Good old days.
The good old days. So, those times we think they won't come back again. They probably will. As we all know, cycles don't often repeat, but they do rhyme. And banking has its cycles as well. The banks need to continue to fund properties, fund loans for them to generate wealth.
Yep.
And we've got lots of people coming into the country. We've got a massive undersupply of housing in this country. And the best way for the banks to profit off that is to continue to lend. And if they're comfortable and they've got enough confidence in the market that it's continuing to grow and there's going to be another person who will pay more than that person and the cycle continues to flow through, well, they'll find ways to continue to let people borrow. Because it only becomes a problem, Mike, when people can't repay their loans or the market drops. Until then, all bets are off.
Which, it's fair to say that the Australian property market doesn't drop in any super meaningful way. For example, you go back all the way back to the 70s, the property doesn't drop by 10%, like nationally speaking. Our downturns peak at around about 7%. And only if you're forced to sell during that time do you have a particular problem. And our mortgage arrears rates, I think, are probably the envy of many countries in the world. And the way that that finance works in Australia is very different in America. We couldn't have a subprime mortgage crisis in the same way that they did, with the way that defaults don't stick to them in the same way that we do. So, I guess we're talking about a very different ecosystem, and banks are relatively safe in Australia. But I want to ask you the question, because there will be people saying, okay, well, like I do want to be one of those big investors, and I'm just about to buy my second or my third one, and I do want to know how trusts work. So typically, if we say have a property investor and they've got a couple of properties and the bank says, unless your income grows substantially or unless those properties grow by 20% in the next 6 months, it's a no from us right now. What are some of the options that they have, whether it maybe be going to second tier lenders first, and in which case would it be appropriate, if they're wanting to grow their portfolio, to have a chat with you and say, look, let's see if a trust might be the right decision? The Geared for Growth Property Investing podcast is presented by our business, MCG Quantity Surveyors. If you're an investor or a property professional looking to get the best tax depreciation deductions for yourself or your clients, please get in touch with us at mcgqs.com.au. It's our mission to help as many property investors as we can to maximise their claims and maximise their property education as well.
Yeah, well, I'll step in the feet on the toes. Actually, sorry, I'll step on the toes of a mortgage broker here. First thing I want to look at is, what's stopping you or what's slowing you down from lending. It could be living costs are too high, living expenses are too high. It could be you've got credit card debt, HEX debt. There could be a lot of other things or other factors that are maybe slowing down your ability to continue to borrow. Then I want to look at your income. What are the channels and avenues available to you to increase that or improve that? They're the little small hanging fruits, Mike, that we have available to us, as I mentioned before. Then I want to really create a strategy. I'm actually encouraging lots of clients before they come to me with a trust to say, you need to have a lending strategy built out. And that's not just looking at property 2 or 3, but what happens for property 4, 5, and 6. Because it's all well and good to have that structure available there to you to use, but we still need to come up with a deposit. And our properties may not be increasing at this beautiful linear movement of 6 to 7% per year. We may not have the access to the equity to utilise as well. Where are you in your journey? Where are you at life? Are you looking to have children, getting married? Are you travelling overseas? These are all major factors that will change the advice of an accountant, whether you should move into structure or not. But all things said and done, you want to stay here, you've cleaned up everything as much as you can, your lending strategies in play, well, then you need to make sure that you've got the right asset matching the right structure. And I always like to use a very linear but a three-way movement of your finances. Lending strategy leads to your acquisition strategy. Your acquisition strategy then leads to your tax and structure strategy. There's
Nice.
no point going and buying, having a great lending strategy. I'm then going to go buy units in St Kilda for 900 grand, renting for 450 a week. And I'm going to go buy that in a trust on the basis that I believe that this particular property's got some great potential for a path to being positive in the future. That's just a very clear example of those three areas not matching each other. But if you've got a client who's got a great lending strategy and going to be acquiring a property where they can improve the rental value, improve the capital value, bring that path to being positive to be a lot quicker than, say, waiting 10 years, well, then that's where a good trust structure may come into play. So you still need to make sure that you're understanding those three parts of the finance space. Because as we all know, Mike, 80% or even 90% of being a successful property investor is the finance part. Buying the properties is somewhat easier in most circumstances. So you've got those three things in place, structure in place, you've got the right property in place, then it's a matter of activating the entity. What things do we need to do to get that property or to get that entity to be positive? And that's where buying really good X-factor properties comes into play, and then being part of a larger asset position or a larger financial position as well. All the while, you can't forget the fundamentals of investing, saving your money, working on your income, because all this works with a cash cow, and that cash cow could be your business or it could be your job. But if you haven't got that cash cow there, you're going to find it very difficult to hold properties long term. Probably one of the main things to consider. So for me, I'm really testing the lending strategy of the client, what their acquisition strategy is, and making sure that the structure strategy is coherent across what they're looking at doing.
So when we do see some of these buyers agents advertising the trusts and, talking about this ability to be unstuck by invoking a trust, what are they actually talking about? What is the magic of trust that enables us to go into that next property when there's no other avenue?
Yeah, well, I'll use Effie's words that she had in the big TV spiel that she had about trust. Think of a trust like a box, and the loan and the property goes into the box. And if that box is able to maintain itself, i.e. the income more than expenses, then often the debt within inside that box, that trust, can be negated. There are some policies out there from some banks which will allow you to do some self-declaration debt exclusion, which is essentially you signing your rights away, saying that I can't chase the bank for, not prudentially lending me money the right way. And people need to understand that that's a risk attached to it. And there is also a risk of potentially of over-lending off the back of it. So there still needs to be some due diligence from the professional and also from you as an investor. You need to be responsible for your own affairs. And if you know that things are tight and you're going to continue to load yourself up with more debt, well, you've got a house of cards ready to crumble. So there are some things there that you need to consider: the way the structure works, the way that it needs to act, and some policies available to you. But there is cost that comes with it, Mike. Establishment costs, anywhere between 2.5 to 4 or 5 grand in some instances, and running costs, anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000, which is, the general nature of scope of fees for many trusts.
On a yearly basis.
On a yearly basis.
I've been hearing a little bit about a magic technique called an accountant's letter. Apparently you accountants can put a bit of scribble down, give it to a bank, and suddenly this magic VIP portal opens to unlimited lending. What are people talking about when they're talking about an accountant's letter?
Yeah, so it's quite often a debate I have with other brokers and clients as well. Our role as the accountant, we're there to act in good faith. We're there to be ethical and moral, and we've got a code of conduct to work under, being under the Tax Practitioners Board or any under other regulatory authority. But yeah, essentially with an accountant's letter to say that that trust is positively geared, because quite often most people are buying without the financials being completed. It could be part way through the year, or the financials haven't been completed yet. The accountant can write a letter to confirm that that trust is able to maintain itself. Now, if the accountant, and I'm not saying that they are or have been or are not, but if the accountant is not doing the due diligence correctly, reviewing that, that structure, that trust itself with all the assets that it's got in it, and it's not in a genuine position where it's more than professional doubt to be positively geared, well, then someone can run away with potentially more borrowing than they should have in the first place.
Yep.
So in short, if the accountant's writing a dodgy letter, someone might be able to borrow more money.
Yep.
But the accountant is the one that's taking the ultimate risk. They're risking their practice, they're risking their license and their registration if they're doing things incorrectly. The broker's also risking, their potential license and practice as well, and the client's also potentially putting themselves in a poor position because maybe they shouldn't have been able to get that loan to start with, because just for the rare circumstance they couldn't afford it.
That's an interesting point, isn't it? Like if the bank is saying it's a bit too risky, maybe pause and reflect.
But for most of my clients have been investing for 10 plus years and had property in structure for a very long time. Organically, it does become positive.
Yes.
They may have added a granny flat to it. Rents have definitely increased over the last 5 years, if not doubled and tripled in some places. Even with interest rates being at 5 and 4 and 6%, it's probably where they were paying interest 10 years ago anyways. So all they've got is they're paying interest the same rate at 10 years ago, but they've got 3 times the level of rent. So organically they are and do have positive trust. My entities that I've had for quite a while, a lot of my properties in there are quite positive because I've added the value to it.
Yep.
And it's a mechanism that I can utilize. So for many people that are out there, if you're looking for that quick fix, that adrenaline hit, I'm going to buy property in a trust today, borrow tomorrow, sometimes it's not going to be the place or time, or sometimes it's not going to even happen for quite a while.
Yep.
Property investing is one of those things where you just got to go through the process over 20 years. The most successful investors I manage have been in the same profession, Mike, for 20 plus years and have been investing for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
I see so many people that are so hyped about property investment, they're all in it for 2 years and then something else captures their attention, whether it's cryptocurrency or whether it's starting up an online business, family, children. It's the consistent approach to something that will make you a master of that trade.
Beautiful. Yeah. Awesome advice there, Jeremy. So it begs the question, if we recap on trust, if we can get a trust inside, a trust as a box, has a property inside it that we've either been patient or we've added value or the rent's grown and it's positively geared, it enables us to create another trust or another box and almost ignore that one exists because it is a positively geared one. It begs the question, why would we then maybe add another property to the first box rather than the second one, even though there are costs in setting that up? Is there ever a situation where we would be building multiple properties within one trust, or is it better to try and get that one to a positive position and then wipe out that debt and sort of go again with new boxes?
Yeah, so look, modeled this out with many professionals just to kind of get the balance right. An accountant's vested interest is for you to have 10 boxes and 10 properties because there's a lot of fees charged for that. But the way I've modeled it out with other professionals is we look at 3 boxes: property 1, 2, 3 in box 1, 2, 3.
Right.
Property 4, 5, 6 in box 1, 2, 3. And property 7, 8, 9 in box 1, 2, 3. So there's a lot of boxes and numbers I've said, but essentially what it means is as you're buying property number 4 in box number 1, you've had box number 1 and property number 1 for probably a period of 4, 5 or 6 years.
Yep.
So you've allowed that box number 1 and that property number 1 to grow just with natural inflation or potentially improvements that you've forced upon the property from a capital and a rental perspective. So you've allowed that box to grow. You've allowed the contents in that box to become better. And when you're adding property number 4 in box number 1, it's still keeping, ideally and hopefully, box number 1 in a positive position.
Yep.
Because if you're just adding, property 1, 2, 3 in box number 1, you're going to start all the way down here, and it's just going to be like absolutely clawing yourself out of a hole till you start to see the positive attributes that property or that trust provides.
Yep.
So box 1, 2, 3, property 1, 2, 3, and then we just go back and cycle it again. Property 4, 5, 6, box 1, 2, 3, property 7, 8, 9, box 1, 2, 3. Want to make sure we manage the risk and the asset value per box as well. That's not just a genuine one size fits all again, but a one size fits many, because sometimes you might have properties in there worth 100 grand. I know they're not out there in their droves, but there could be some cheaper properties you buy, which is much different to a $2 million residential or $2 million commercial property.
Yes.
So we still need to factor that in, because again, a large reason of why we go into corporate structure is for asset protection. Then we look at the tax benefits, and then some borrowing benefits come after that.
Yep. And I suppose I'm just thinking about going back to the first sort of study of someone that's wanting to grow that portfolio. The personal name has some huge advantages in it that trusts potentially don't have. Obviously, you've got the negative gearing benefits, you've got CGT benefits. Do you think that people sort of covet the trust so much that they don't understand, well, as an individual, it actually is a good vehicle for the first one or the first two?
Absolutely. And people they just don't understand that sometimes when you're going in with a lower deposit or higher leverage, that little bit of negative gearing benefit that you're obtaining is juicy, it's gold. It helps manage the cash flow, especially when you do PYG variations. One of the biggest things that we, and this is your field about depreciation, yes, we can claim depreciation in a trust, but if it's already in a position where it's negatively geared, that depreciation is only increasing those losses further. Yes, that delayed gratification will come when you sell the property. You're able to obtain a gain against all the losses that have been accrued over the years. Where depreciation in a property that's owned in your own name, you're actually getting that tax benefit on that depreciation upfront as a tax refund.
Yep.
And I call it this perfect property position, Mike. I'll share with you, and you'll have maybe a bit of a giggle, but I've seen properties where they are cash flow positive.
Yep.
Cash flow positive. Income, rental income is more than the actual cost, the actual physical expenses that someone's had to pay. But that beautiful little thing called depreciation comes in and drops our positive cash flow property into now tax negatively geared.
Mm-hmm.
So we've made maybe 3 or 4 grand cash flow. We've got 10 grand worth of depreciation, which has now given us a $6,000 to $7,000 negative gearing position on the property, which has then yielded the client a further 3 grand or 4 grand in refund.
Mm.
And that means not only the client made 3 or 4 grand in cash, they're also getting paid 3 or 4 grand from the ATO as well as physical cash from their refund. And that's something that you're not going to get in a trust. Because if you're cash flow positive and the depreciation brings it into negative, well, all it does is it carries forward that loss to the future.
Yes.
And you will get that benefit, and that benefit will come when either the trust is generally positive tax and cash-wise or when the property is sold. So when you're younger, capital preservation is key. Having as much capital as you can to help build your buffer and help go towards the savings and deposit of your next property, that's the biggest thing that you need to think about. Because as your income grows and your sophistication grows as well, your wisdom and experience grows, that's when you start to bring in more sophisticated structures.
That I think seems so simple that maybe we overlook it. Like the most important thing for a property investor is your cash, your savings, and the cash that's coming in through your job, through your business, whatever it is, right? But we tend to kind of ignore the fact that that is so powerful that preserving it is very important. Setting up a trust is not a cash preservation exercise. It's maybe an unlocking potential exercise, but it's not holding on to the money that we have, right?
Correct. Absolutely correct. So it's just the right time and the right place to utilize the right structure.
Yep.
I'm all for it, and I know long term, for most cases, trusts or corporate structure will be more beneficial than individual ownership. And it's not a statement that covers everything. There are some examples as where you should be looking at your own name, and New South Wales is probably a key example of that. If you haven't got a property in New South Wales, you might want to absorb your land tax threshold here in New South Wales first before you go into a structure, because there may not be available thresholds to you, which means you've set out to achieve passive income, but all you've done is loaded more costs, this beautiful thing called land tax. Beautiful for the state government, not for us as
Yeah, I was going to say.
Beautiful for state government, but not for us. But that's one of the reasons as to why potential individual ownership could be better, to actually reduce costs. And yes, it may not assist, in future from a borrowing perspective, but I definitely will tell you it will assist from your back pocket perspective when you're not getting that nasty land tax bill. So you kind of want to look at a holistic way, absorbing thresholds, buying those first couple in your own name to keep things simple, to make sure this is for you. If you're using lower deposits, high leverages, you want to make sure you're looking at some negative gearing benefit. While it's a benefit, it's not a strategy. We don't buy properties just for this long-term negative gearing benefit, because sooner or later the piper needs to be paid, which is the bank. And ensuring that you're matching your lending strategy with your acquisition strategy, and then ultimately with your tax structuring strategy as well.
Love that. To finish this off, if there's somebody that's had a conversation with a buyer's agent who's sort of said, look, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to investigate, what should they do as a next step to get comfortable that, yes, this is actually the right decision?
So you've got, this is the positives now. So a buyer's agent is there to evoke emotion, is there to open a door that you may not have seen before. And quite often, people feel more comfortable exploring property investment journey with a buyer's agent before they go chat with their broker or their accountant. There could be a cost attached to it, maybe, don't know. But if a buyer's agent has opened those ideas to you, brilliant. And I believe everybody should talk to as many people as they can to get as many opinions as they can, whether it's your father at the barbecue or Auntie Debbie who bought a property 25 years ago who has lost her brain and she's telling you that an Armageddon's coming in. Still listen to what she has to say, because there could be a one sentence in there that evokes a positive emotion, or a positive thought, or an inquisitiveness to then go seek out the right person for the right answers. So anything lending, you want to be going to your broker. Anything tax, you want to be going to your accountant or quantity surveyor. Anything legal, your solicitor or conveyancer is the person to help you out. Anything financial, have a chat with a financial planner or potentially a buyer's agent if you're going down the real estate path. While you may feel that you could be wasting their time, it could be an opportunity for the professional to add some value with you and then ultimately get some value back long term as well. So invite the conversation, invoke the inquisitiveness from the conversation that a buyer's agent would have, but don't just follow the word as gospel, because there's a lot of things, as I'm still learning today after nearly 2 decades in the industry. And the day that I think I know everything, I guarantee you there's a Mount Everest to climb of more information. So you've got to make sure you're reaching out with the right people just to engage in conversation.
Well, mate, I want to say a big thank you for dedicating your time for free to educate people that are in that kind of quagmire of conflicting advice and the advertising that's coming at them hard and fast. Take a moment, pause and reflect. Think about, as you said, what is the mortgage strategy, what is the property acquisition strategy, and what is the right structure for that. And if you just break it down to those 3 simple questions and you get the advice for those buckets, then you're on your way to hopefully some success in property, right?
Beautiful. That's it.
Thanks, Jeremy. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, Mike.